Hi, and welcome to my channel, Melody Joy Quilts. I am your host, Melody Joy, and today we are going to be talking about a free pattern from Moda. This pattern is called Quadrangle. So a little backstory. For Mother's Day, I made my mom this quilt called Songsparrow, and she put it in her guest bedroom/office. And it is a beautiful quilt, and I had a lot of fun making it. But she came to me and said, Melody Joy, I need some pillowcases to go on top of my quilt in the guest bedroom. So I used this pattern, Quadrangle. I made a simple envelope style pillowcase. I put some binding around it, and the front of the pillowcase is all the Quadrangle pattern. So let me show you how to make a few of these blocks. You need the pattern. I'm going to link it in the description. Like I said, it's a free pattern from Moda. You're going to need some sashing strips and some cornerstones. The cornerstones are going to be 1.5 inch squares. They go right in the center of the block, and then you're going to need some sashing strips. So from your background, I am using the fabric Kona Snow for sashing. You're going to need 4 pieces that are 4.5 inches by 1.5 inches. This block comes together really quickly and easily. 4 sashing strips, a cornerstone, and then 4 4-patch. The 4 patches are made with jelly roll strips. And fun fact, Moda actually made this pattern for National Sew a Jelly Roll Day. This worked out really well because I had some jelly roll strips left over from making the full-size quilt for my mom. So choose your jelly roll strips and some type of low volume strip. And you're gonna take a jelly roll strip and a low volume strip and just sew that together to make a strip set. You need to make several of these. I have a whole pile of them over here because you're gonna need several, because every block of this quilt requires 4 4-patches. So take your jelly roll strip and your low volume strip, put them right sides together, and sew a 1/4 inch seam down one side. Next, you will need to iron your strip set open, pressing the seam allowance towards the darker fabric. And then cut your strip set into 2.5 inch strips. This is to prepare for making your 4 patches. I have a bunch of these strip sets made, and then you just need to cut them in 2.5 inch strips. I already have a bunch of pieces already cut into 2.5 inch strips. So you're gonna take one with a darker square on top and one with a darker square on the bottom. Put them right sides together. Like I said, if you pressed towards the darker fabric, your seams should nest really nicely. So just nest that up with your fingers. Make sure the corners are lining up, and then sew a 1/4 inch seam down one side of this little 4-patch block. Repeat this 4 times with a set of all the same colors to make one quadrangle block. Okay, I'm starting to gather what I need for the one block. My 4 sashing strips, 1 cornerstone in a contrasting color. I need to iron these little 4 patches open. So I'm going to grab my iron. I'm going to set my seam and then iron each one open. It doesn't really matter which way you iron on your 4 patches because these don't have to nest with anything. They're going with the sashing strips, so there's no nesting of seams. So iron it whichever way your heart desires. So I want you to note the orientation of this block. Each of the 4 patches, a dark corner is pointing towards the center cornerstone. So when you lay your block out, make sure that a dark corner is going towards your cornerstone. Then lay in your sashing strips. And now we're just gonna sew this block together. It comes together so quickly and easily, and I think it's such a darling little block. What do y'all think? Isn't it cute? Lay your sashing strip on the edge there, right sides together, just making sure you line up at the corners. I like to leave the sashing strip on top so I can see it, so I make sure that I'm just using a careful 1/4 inch seam. Now, don't be scared. It is a 1.5 inch strip and a 1.5 inch cornerstone. But just because it's small doesn't mean it's any harder. You just need to take your time. You're still using a 1/4 inch seam. I would recommend turning your stitch length smaller. If you normally sew with a 2.5, maybe turn it down to a 2 or even a 1.5 because, and this is on your stitch length, because you are working with smaller pieces, you'll get more stitches across each little block if you turn your stitch size smaller. Now, the pressing instructions in the pattern, this part, it does tell you. You're gonna press it towards the sashing on each piece. The 4 patch goes iron the seam allowance towards the sashing, and with the cornerstone part, you're gonna iron it towards your sashing. This is gonna allow you to nest it together when you put these 3 rows together. So iron everything with the seam allowance towards the sashing. Again, double check your orientation. The 4 patches should be pointing, the dark part of the block should be pointing in towards the cornerstone. It basically makes an X across the block, which creates a chaining pattern when you put these blocks together. So everything needs to go towards that cornerstone. So pick up your next pieces. Again, just take a minute, make sure your corners are lined up, and then slide it under 1/4 inch seam. Just continue to sew the next pieces on, right sides together, taking your time, especially on these small parts, 1/4 inch seam. It doesn't have to be anything special than what you normally do, but just take your time and try to go slow. We are once again going to be ironing towards the sashing. So just press to set your seams. open it up and iron everything towards the sashing. Give it a good press, make it nice and flat. It is at this point that you can really see how your block is going to come together. I always get really happy at this point. So fold your sashing strip over onto the top of it, nest up those seams. Now up until this point, I haven't used any clips or pins, but this part does really matter. It's going to make your block look better. So once you've nested up those 2 center seams, clip it or pin it or both, but just secure it in some way so that it will come out really accurate. Once again, you're going to press to set your seam and then fold this open, pressing it down towards the sashing. Add your next row in. Again, nest those seams up with the cornerstone and add your clips or pins to secure it before you sew it. I've made several of these blocks now, and I have decided that I prefer to have the small sashing strip on top of my larger block. Because it's only 1.5 inches long, I want to make sure that my 1/4 inch, that I'm not missing any of that 1.5 inch. If it was on the bottom and I couldn't see it, there's less leeway with that 1.5 inch strip. Okay. This is it. You've done it. You're going to iron this and open it up, and you have made a quadrangle block. It's really not that hard, and it's a cute block. I think this would look really cute like in Christmas colors with like a dark green background or dark green sashing to make it look like a Christmas plaid. I just love it. I think it's such a darling block. I hope you make it. I hope you enjoy it. And maybe you can do what I did and put it into a pillowcase or a small quilt. So I wanted to show you how these blocks fit in to the larger quadrangle pattern. You will need more cornerstones and sashing because in between each of these blocks, you put cornerstone and sashing. I just quilted this with diagonal lines on a 45-degree angle, and I thought it came out really cute. And again, just a simple envelope style closure for the pillowcase. And then I added binding, and I just tried to make something pretty for my mom's bed. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial today on the free pattern Quadrangle. Go grab yourself a copy, Quadrangle by Moda, and make yourself something pretty today. Happy quilting!